We are
Hello,
live.
YouTube. How's it going?
Wow, we're on YouTube. Can you imagine
Yeah,
that? That's crazy to
it's
me.
fantastic. Yeah, this is great. Our new platform is shiny and pretty. It's even got the new platform smell. I'm pretty stoked, Norm. How about you?
New platform smell. I like that. I like that a
Mm.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. If you are tuning in, this is the Zocalo, and we talk about all things Babylon 5 every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific in our new home here on YouTube. Hi, John Bowersox, who just joined us. He's here almost every week, and we are grateful for that. Thank you. We have a fun show tonight. It's going to be a good one.
Now, technically, this is our first YouTube show, but for people that are joining the channel, the ZCast Network, the ZócaloCast is our main show, and that's what we used to do on Facebook, and we'll probably keep things going here if everything goes well. I think this new John Bowersox is
we are on different sides. It's a little weird. It's going to take some adjustment.
purple and green, right? So
yeah. Oh, speaking of which, can we jump ahead real quick to talk about our merch and pimp out the merch? Because I got a new green shirt because I've had purple for some time. You're in purple. You're stunning in purple. And I am green follows green leader.
Green follows green leader. That's right.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to get some merch, go to TeePublic, look for ZCast ZCast_designs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And check that out. It's good stuff. You can get more than shirts too. You can get mugs. You can get all sorts of fun stuff. But back to your point, sir.
Well, I love the fact that now, see, when Char and I were doing this on Be Live, Char didn't have a chance to see the chat as it's going live. So we see your chat, which is fantastic. Thanks, guys, for chiming in. And I just wanted to let everyone know that this is our first show on YouTube, but this is like our 31st show as the Zocalo. So I don't know if we can import those videos from the Facebook page to here, but I'd like to try so we can get all of our content up on this channel, because we really do want to grow the channel and have this more of the destination spot for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if all else fails, though, you can still see those old episodes on the Facebook group. And I know Facebook's not for everybody, though, which is a part of why we wanted to come here. And we do appreciate all of you who have come over. We noticed we've got quite a few subscribers already before we even put anything to the channel. So thank you, guys. That would be great. And hello to B.A. Cowles. Dana, I'm going to slaughter your name. Montagnese?
Montagnese.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm horrible with names. Thank you for creating an account so you could join us. And John, I hope I have a better connection too. We did a test run, a little trial before we did this last week. It went really well. We were blown away by just the interface, the connection, everything. So we're hoping this is going to be a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a fantastic experience, and I think that being on YouTube is just going to give us a little bit more of a broader reach, and we're going to take it from there. So we'll see what happens, but we have a lot to talk about this, and I'm glad that we're doing this particular show for the first YouTube show, because I think that this is a fun format. So take it away, Char, because I know how much you really enjoy the See It or Skip It format.
Yes, this is something I did with my co-host Tristan Riddell on To the Journey long ago. And it has thus spawned many other folks, inspired them to do this whole thing. And we are doing a See It or Skip It for season 1 with the following ground rules. Mm-hmm. The first and probably the most important one for Babylon 5 is going to be, are the actions in the story critical to understanding future events? So, for instance, if you skip the episode that we're talking about and realize that you might be a little
we spoke
that creates a good argument for putting the episode. Did my connection go out?
Right.
Oh, what was the last thing you heard me say?
Yeah, but it's not that bad. I mean, it just kind of stuttered a little bit, so we're okay. Okay, keep going.
Oh, that could have just been me too. So this is probably the most crucial element, just like I said, since so many of the moving pieces of the story, they're often intertwined. That said, it's important to consider elements like flashback sequences, self-referential dialogue that might refer to these past events, maybe occurring in season 1, which will create this wild card element that might bring a viewer up to speed, thus potentially weakening the argument for making an episode essential. Just a thought to consider. Our second criterion is the episode crucial for a character? So in episodes where the plot is maybe just a backdrop for a serious character development, so it's much less about not what's happening, but what the character is going through, the actual events don't matter as much as how the character is affected. And nevertheless, that might be enough to justify keeping an episode because we've learned something valuable about that character. Now, another thing to consider going through this is that a balance or an imbalance, as the case might be, of points 1 or 2 might strengthen or weaken an argument for the episode overall. And that's where I think we're going to have a lot of debate and where we're going to have to reach a consensus, because we do have to reach a consensus. So bring on the fun. That's how we're going to determine whether an episode is absolutely essential viewing. Yes, you must see it, or nah, you can skip it.
It'll be really interesting to see like what our totals are at the end. But the one transition that we want to make sure that we bring over from the Facebook group, from the original video to now, is our toast, because that is essential Babylon 5 tradition.
100% essential. So what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, you know I'm drinking my Brevari.
In your fancy glass. Very good. Good,
yes,
good.
This is my Centauri glass, yes.
I'm in my white trashy beer pong glass.
Also
as I do.
Very, very classy. Very classy.
I'm drinking my margarita. Yes, I am.
You know, before we jump into See It or Skip It, the one thing that I forgot to tell you or ask you is if we wanted to start with The Gathering, but The Gathering isn't really kind of like in season proper. It's more like, you know, the pilot episode. So we'll get to those special moments. But
yeah.
I think we're going to jump like right into it. And I think we should just take turns like alternating these little synopses. We've taken our synopses from the wiki of Babylon 5. It's a really good page, and it has all these really great, very short synopses because we want to make sure that we get through all of these See It or Skip It's in our votes and our deliberations within the hour.
We have 22, plus we're going to have your comments. So let's toast, because we didn't toast. We just talked about what we drank. Right. So, Val 2.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Good energy on this show tonight.
Delicious.
Yeah, it makes me want to dance. All right. Well, do you want me to go first?
Absolutely. Please do.
All right. So let's tackle Midnight on the Firing Line. Short synopsis is, when the Narns... I can't talk. When the Narn attack a Centauri colony, Londo and G'Kar nearly come to blows. Meanwhile, raiders are attacking transport ships near the station. Now, right out of the gate, this is a difficult one for me, because it is episode 1, and yet nothing happens in this episode that I feel is absolutely essential, but it does kind of set the precedent for what you can expect out of Babylon 5. And as an intro episode, this is where I recommend people start. Mm-hmm. So I'm really on the fence, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I agree with everything that you said. And I too really put scrutiny, to all of my choices, because it's a difficult thing with season 1 of Babylon 5, because this is the season that establishes so much tone. Yes. And I think that that's where I'm tipping to where I voted on this, because it does set the tone. It does set the rivalry between Londo and G'Kar. It does set the diplomacy of Sinclair, and it also establishes Ivanova being new to the station, and drops some tidbits of why certain characters did not graduate from the pilot episode of The Gathering to here, especially Ivanova. So there's a lot of specific tone that is established in this episode. So would you like my vote on this?
Yes, please.
Okay, for those reasons, I say see this episode, because it does establish tone, the visual vocabulary, and the rivalry and the hatred between the Centauri and the Narn regime, especially with Londo and G'Kar, and sets up that great 20-year later dream sequence.
Yes. Okay. There was the clincher for me. Yes, it is a tone setter, and that's probably the most important aspect of it. And the fact that Londo and G'Kar's story means so much to the story at large gives this episode a lot of weight as an introduction. But the fact that we have that future sequence on top of it all is like the icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think if you don't see that, and if you don't see this as a first episode, you're going to miss out on some really important stuff. So I vote keep it. It's essential.
All right, so we're in agreement on that.
We are.
Let's move to the next episode then. Episode 2, Soul Hunter. A badly damaged ship is brought into the station, and the strange alien inside is identified as a soul hunter, an immortal race who can sense death and supposedly steal someone's soul. Now, this is one of those episodes that, again, you're looking at what does it do for the overall storyline? What does it do for character development? What does it do for Babylon 5 as a whole? As much as I like this episode, for me, this is a skip it episode.
I have to agree. Yes. Even though it introduces you to the Soul Hunters, which we very recently talked about with River of Souls, I think these are kind of mutually exclusive. You don't have to see one to understand the other. The Soul Hunters get enough of a decent introduction in River of Souls to where you can understand them. And then here, they're kind of one-offs. Mm-hmm. Nothing really happens here of such extraordinary circumstance that this is essential viewing. It's not a bad episode, but no, you don't have to see it. No.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of our favorites. And W. Morgan Shepherd is really great in this. And there's that great line. He's like, he's yelling at Sinclair, they're using you. They're using you. Sure, that's a kernel of information that you can extrapolate towards later episodes, especially if you know Babylon 5. But it's not necessarily essential to the viewing.
Right. And our goal is basically to create a list that puts down, say, somebody who's never seen Babylon 5, and you tell them you need to watch all of these episodes to understand the Babylon 5 story. It's kind of like the TLDR version, Too Long Didn't Read. It's a Reddit thing if you don't know what that stands for.
All right.
Okay. So number 3, Born to the Purple. Londo's career is in jeopardy when a beautiful slave seduces him and steals a sensitive computer file. Garibaldi investigates an unauthorized use of a restricted communications channel. Now, this one has a couple of things going for it. We do know that Adira does come back, kind of. She's at least supposed to come back to the station. And this episode has the element of the Ivanova and her dad storyline, because this is where Garibaldi uncovers that she's been using this secure channel to talk with her dying father. For that, is this little mini arc, it's important to watch it, I think.
Okay, so you're saying see this episode?
I'm saying see it. What do you say?
Well, this was a tough one for me because I'm looking at this as what does it do to further characters that mean a lot to me? I know how important Ivanova is to you, but overall, I just think that if you remove this episode from the continuity of season 1, I don't think it creates any real narrative shifts. And that's what I'm looking for, scrutinizing, like really scrutinizing these episodes. So because I'm trying to be as really strict about your rules as I want to be, I'm actually going to say skip it.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm neither here nor there. Like, I'm not steadfast in my opinion on this one. Can you skip to the episode where Ivanova's father does die and still have enough context to where that story makes sense? Because you're still getting the action of that happening to that character. And it's important when Uncle Yosel comes out that you know that Ivanova's father has died. So maybe I'm thinking a little too early. Maybe you can skip this and still be able to jump in. I want to know from our listeners, what do you think? Dana says, watch it. Now,
Dana, are you saying watch Soul Hunters or watch Born to the Purple?
I think maybe she means this one. Her previous comment was, my son and I skipped this in our initial first season watch. No loss, but interesting episode. I think she's talking about Soul Hunter in that one. Please correct me. And B.A. Cal says, Soul Hunters are interesting. Yes, they are. Absolutely, they are. But are they essential viewing? Not necessarily. Not here, since we never see them again.
Yeah, they're kind of like as much as I love the techno mages in Geometry of Shadows in season 2, it's not, they make an appearance and they're kind of like poof.
Right.
Geometry of Shadows is completely important for a completely other reason than techno mages. Right?
Indeed. Okay, so Dana came back. She said she was talking about Born to the Purple.
Gotcha.
She says to watch it. Yeah, this is kind of a 50-50 one, but you can skip it. I think you can get away with skipping it.
I mean, don't let me influence. I mean, if that's the way you want, but I am keeping a tally.
Are you? Oh, so am I.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. Well, we can compare numbers if you want.
Are you going to keep Born to the Purple or no?
You know what? I have always done this where we come to a consensus. So we need to agree that yes, we skip it or no, we don't. And I'm totally okay with saying skip it.
Okay. Skip it then.
So we'll skip it.
Skip. Alrighty then. On to the next episode, which is episode 4, Infection. Dr. Franklin gets a visit from old friend and mentor, xenoarchaeologist Dr. Hendricks. He wants Franklin's help to analyze high-tech organic artifacts he found on a dead world, but the artifacts seem to have a will of their own and start to manipulate Hendricks' assistant. And this was I think this was an interesting episode from a science fiction standpoint, but for me, it doesn't really further along any of the story. This is a bottle episode, and it sure it brings in, Ilya Kuryakin, from Man from U.N.C.L.E. I can't remember, David McCallum. And it also brings in who will eventually become Talon, the Marshall Teague.
Sure.
And I love both of those actors, but that's the love for those actors and obviously an interesting story to get Franklin's story up and running. But it doesn't really add anything if you, again, or subtract anything if you pull that out of the narrative timeline for the thrust of what season 1 I think is trying to accomplish. So I say it's a skip it for me.
Yeah, definitely a skip it for me too. This episode, I mean, it doesn't do a whole lot for me in general. Really, the best thing it does is it gives you a little bit of insight into Dr. Franklin. This is an old friend of his who turns out he's not such a great guy. So if anything, we learn that Franklin has lousy friends. I don't know. Yeah, this one, you don't need to know anything about it. Sorry.
I agree. I mean, again, it's one of those in 22 episodes. There is going to be some filler, especially when you're trying to establish, again, the tone of season 1, let alone like the narrative line and thread of season 1. So this is just one of those filler episodes.
Yeah, exactly. It is in every way, shape, and form. It's a standalone. And that's okay. Especially in season 1 where they had to really kind of ease the audience into a more kind of, streamlined, episodic, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my God. The serialized format. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I haven't had enough Bravari for this. So, next episode, The Parliament of Dreams. Sinclair's old flame, Catherine Sakai, arrives during a week-long festival where humans and aliens demonstrate their religious beliefs. An old enemy sends an assassin to kill Jakar. Now, just based on the Catherine Sakai angle alone, we need to keep this episode because it delves into their relationship, their past, what we're going to see going forward in their future. And also, I don't know how important this is, but I do enjoy seeing different species and their religious customs, their ceremonies. You learn how, you kind of get a feel for the Minbari and how they are, as opposed to the Centauri and Solando's drunken party. Also, it's fun, but it gives a lot of insight into this world that's been created. And therefore, big picture wise, yeah, I do think it's essential.
I agree. This is a definite see it because of everything that you said. Plus, I do like the fact that this is Babylon 5 showing how different it is from other science fiction series. Yeah. The way that they handle the human religious celebration with all the different religious figures at the end, that's stretching all along the corridors of Babylon 5. I just think that it's a really good study of spirituality, what that means, and also the introduction of Catherine Sakai, who in season 1, and not just her importance in season 1, but also how it starts to give Sinclair a little bit more depth as a character.
Definitely. Yeah. Catherine Sakai is one of those few people who can really kind of tug at his heartstrings, press the right buttons, if you will, which a lot of people can't do. Sinclair's pretty, he's got a nice, hard exterior, which does him well in his work. So I want to just jump over to the comments real quick.
Sure.
Some very quick things. John Bowersock says, instead of Born to be Wild, it's now Born to the Purple. I dig. And Dana says, with infection, the only element that contributes to the overall storyline is the mention of IPX. Good point. And while that's true, I don't think that's enough to keep that episode because we can easily learn about IPX later on. It's a company and they do archaeological things. Cool.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And even if they took out the IPX factoid, it wouldn't change the narrative really in any way because there's no tie-in to Anna Sheridan at this time with IPX.
No, not yet. So easy to get rid of that one.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
The next is Mind War, Episode 6. A rogue telepath with exceptional powers takes refuge on Babylon 5, and 2 Psycops arrive to capture him. Catherine Sakai heads to Sigma 957 to survey it for Quantum 40, ignoring Jakar's grave warnings. See it, period. Period.
Well, this is the introduction of Bester and the Psi Corps, which is incredibly important. So, yeah, that alone means you better see it.
Yeah, on my notes, I said first appearance of Bester. Also, Sigma 957, which touches on the first ones, which later on, right? Because she's
nice little...
the Close Encounters. I call them the Close Encounters first one, but
Zog.
And it also starts talking about Zog yes, Zog no. But it also touches on the whole aspect of telekinesis versus telepaths with Jason Eichhorn.
Right. Yes, and Talia and her gift, and I mean that doesn't necessarily go anywhere, unfortunately, but it's still kind of a thing. Like, hey, there are teaks out there. That's a thing.
Right.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's add that.
But Walter Koenig coming in is he just kills it as Bester.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's so much fun watching him play Bester, especially in contrast to Chekhov on Star Trek. Totally. Oh my God. Well, oh my God. He can act. He's a real actor. He can do things that he would never have had the chance to do on Star Trek.
And this just touches the surface of what he does with Bester.
Totally. Right? Yeah. But it's a good introduction and you have to have that because I don't remember the next episode he's in, but I think you might lose some of that impact without knowing who he is and why he's operating the way he does in this episode. So,
right.
All right. So the next one is the War Prayer. A racist group is terrorizing aliens on Babylon 5, stabbing and branding them. Meanwhile, Londo has trouble with 2 young Centauri who want to break tradition by ignoring their arranged marriages and instead marrying for love. Okay. I'm a little torn on this one because this first part of the story, the racist group and whatnot, it does kind of give you some insight that there are problems. Not everybody's getting along. There are racist groups out there, and some of them are on Earth, and that's going to create a lot of problems going forward. Mm-hmm. But can you skip this and still get that context? I'm actually thinking. As I'm talking, I'm leaning toward no, but what do you think?
This was a tough one because the A story, the story with the poet, sure, yes, it shows that there's issues with Babylon 5 and kind of like this dynamic between xenophobia and what Babylon 5 stands for. But I think that's handled a little bit better later on in other episodes. So, and the only thing the only thing that's really tough about this one is that it literally has one of my favorite Londo lines of all time, and that's my shoes are too tight, but it doesn't matter because I've forgotten how to dance. Now,
yeah,
it's a great Londo character building moment. But again, looking at this from if you watched it, what does it do to the narrative? If you removed it, what does the narrative lose? And for me, as great as it is, I just don't think that it carries the through line as strongly as others. Right.
I feel like you don't need the Centauri storyline to understand things going forward because it's actually better addressed when Londo's wives come to meet him in season 2. So the fact that Centauri culture has arranged marriages and these two want to marry for love.
I love it when Londo says,
have to
love? What does love have to do with marriage? Oh, it's so funny.
Some people would agree with that. I personally don't, but I know people who do.
It's just funny when he does that.
So we're saying skip this one. Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of our skip-its are very begrudgingly so, because you can
Well,
make a case for
sure.
all of them, right? But
Right. Yeah. I mean, Terry already said in the Facebook group, hey, they're all essential. I'd keep them all. And hey, as fans, I totally agree with that. You should watch them all, but that's not the point of this exercise.
right, this is more along the lines of just kind of like reiterate our goal here is that if you had to, it's like, what, I only have X amount of days or hours to watch this. What's the essential?
Right. Right. This is the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, we're giving you the essential. So next episode, episode 8, And the Sky Full of Stars. Sinclair is kidnapped and interrogated by two men determined to prove he betrayed Earth during the Battle of the Line. Without elaborating too much, for me, this is a see it.
Oh, yeah. There's too much about Sinclair in here where you can skip it.
Sorry, Shar, I lost you again. As her camera and audio catches up, one of the things that I love most about And the Sky Full of Stars. Did we get you back? Sunspots.
Did I die? Am I here? Hello, I'm alive.
You're back.
Okay,
good. What I liked about And a Sky Full of Stars is that it deals with the whole 24-hour period of there's a hole in your mind, and that's the reference to the Minbari who said that to Sinclair in The Gathering. And this is kind of like this mind net, this whole kind of like, we're going to go in there and kind of figure out like what was going on. They were close, but what this does more than anything else is that it makes Sinclair doubt what happened and why he can't remember, and puts him on a path.
Yes, that's true. That's what sets this whole thing in motion, is what happens in this episode here. Yeah. So essential.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely essential.
Without a doubt. Okay. Next one is Deathwalker. Best metal episode title ever. I love saying that. Natath attacks an alien woman that has just arrived on the station, claiming that she is the Dilgar war criminal Jadur, known as Deathwalker. And Talia is hired by Kosh to oversee some rather strange negotiations. Yes, they are. So, as far as this one goes, I don't think it's essential. You don't really see or hear from Deathwalker ever again. And the conversation Talia participates in with Kosh, it's so confusing when you watch it for the first time, to where I feel like if this person's only going to watch Babylon 5 one time, it means nothing. You don't need to see it. It makes zero sense. So skip it. What do you say?
No, I agree. As much as I love Deathwalker and I love Sarah Douglas's Deathwalker, and it's really the only physical version of the Dilgar that we see, because she's the last of the Dilgar. It brings up this great science fiction, bottled narrative point with the whole anti-agapic and all that. But again, it doesn't really add anything to the depth of the overall story.
Right. Let's jump over to comments real quick so I don't get too far behind. Daniel Keller says, Parliament of Dreams is one of my favorite early episodes of Sinclair. It's one of my early episode favorites, period. I just love that episode. It's so solid.
Mm-hmm. And Julia Nixon coming in as Catherine Sakai, she just brings a really interesting dynamic to the overall chemistry of the show. Yeah,
she's got a cool persona.
Yeah,
she was really good. I was sad to see her character go.
I loved her in Rambo 2, First Blood Part 2, Rambo.
Oh, she was in there. Nice.
Yeah, she was Sylvester Stallone, or Rambo's Vietnamese special ops girlfriend in that movie.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
Dan said war is essential. Also, Spester, yes. She says that War Prayer is essential if you're a big Londo fan. Otherwise, you could probably skip this. Yeah, I see your point. But big picture-wise, I still got to go with skip it. It breaks my heart, but that's what this whole thing's about.
Well, yeah, and Dana says that she agrees with you. War Prayer essential if you're a Londo fan. Otherwise, you could probably skip this.
Right.
So moving right along, because we are at the halfway mark here for our show.
Right.
And we're almost at the halfway mark here for the episode. So episode 10, Believers. You know how I feel about this episode. I'll straight up.
Really? Have we talked about this before?
I will straight up fight you on this hill if you vote against me.
No, it's okay. We're not going to have to fight, I don't think.
All right. An alien couple comes to Dr. Franklin with their terminally ill son. The child could be cured with a simple operation, but the parents' religion specifically forbids it. Meanwhile, Ivanova escorts a damaged Starliner through Raider territory. This is essential to Stephen Franklin's character, this episode. It tells you everything he's about. He's about risking it all for his own either stubbornness or belief system or expertise. But he's willing to take a court martial just because he believes he's right. And it shows how supremely arrogant he is in his position based on what he believes as a physician.
Right. Yep. I feel like even though you don't see these aliens ever again, I don't even know if we ever hear about them again. Does not matter. The whole Ivanova and Raiders storyline, also, you can trash it, but what you get out of Stephen Franklin, you nailed it. You learn what you need to know about Stephen Franklin as a character in this episode. Also, I think to a fan who is new to Babylon 5 and doesn't know what the show is about, and maybe has seen a lot of Star Trek, this is the episode that shows you that this episode is not Star Trek. This is not your average science fiction. They're going to go there. They're going to go to places that other shows kind of steered clear of. And yeah, I wouldn't skip it. No, so I'm not fighting you at all. I'm agreeing with you.
I like that. That's very awesome. Also, with Believers kind of dovetails into the Parliament of Dreams because it starts reinforcing that there's this study, this kind of this deep dive into belief systems and who is right, what do you believe, whose belief trumps what. And it also, with all of the different ambassadors that these aliens were seeking help from, it shows their stances on things. You know, the Narn want money, the Centauri want influence and renown,
Yeah,
the
good
Minbari want
point.
to stay neutral. So it just reinforces that. Right?
Yeah, that is so true. So it's good, big picture, universe building. So you don't want to miss that.
All right. No fight on that.
Yes,
No
and our
dreams.
listeners agree. Believers is an amazing ep, says Daniel. Sinclair and Franklin they're great. Yeah, I totally agree. They're both fantastic, fighting each other. We didn't see them at odds very often, but they were pretty heated in this one. And John agrees. John Bowersock says, Believers, excellent episode. I can't talk anymore. Blah.
That's funny. Is that also written by Star Trek alumni of famous for Trouble with Tribbles, David Gerald?
That's right. So there is that Star Trek connection. So there's that. Okay. By any means necessary.
Survivors.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. Skipped one. Survivors.
I got it on paper. Old school paper.
Nice. Yeah, that's right. You have old school paper. That's great.
Yeah.
There's an explosion in one of the fighter bays just days before Earth President Santiago is to visit Babylon 5. A dying man implicates Garibaldi, which is just what the head of presidential security wants to hear as she blames him for her father's death. I think you got to know this one. I think it's essential to understanding Garibaldi's character, his past, and of course, the fact that he relapses into alcoholism in season 5 gives this episode a little weight down the line. So initially, yeah, you want that information, but then it really hits when he does face alcoholism again.
I was on the fence about this, thinking about it, and because the Leanna Kemmer storyline was strong, but the other storyline, was there a backup storyline to this? I don't even remember if there was a B plot.
That's a good question. I do not remember what it is, if there is one.
But if I had to vote for Believers being the episode that sets up Franklin, then Survivors is the episode that sets up Garibaldi.
Yep. Yeah. So that alone makes it essential. Even though we don't see Liana again, presidential security becomes an issue down the line. But for Garibaldi alone, it's important to know where he's coming from.
I'm wondering, do we assume, and maybe this is in the the encyclopedia or in Terry Jones's history, but do we assume that she perished with Earth Force One?
I've asked this question, and somebody told me that she often sets up the preparations before he arrives. So she on location, in the craft that exploded. So it's a possibility she didn't. I always assume she did, but somebody said, well, no, not necessarily. Not if she's making preparations beforehand. So maybe not.
Oh, okay. I dig that.
I thought they made an interesting point.
That's a good point. Point. Okay, episode 12, By Any Means Necessary. An accident in the docking bays starts a series of problems on Babylon 5 when a Narn freighter is destroyed and one of the workers is killed. The dock workers demand better conditions or they'll go on strike, and Jakar has to get a replacement Jaquan Eth plant for an important religious ceremony. I absolutely love this episode, but I vote skip it.
Okay, I wasn't sure which direction you were going to go, Norm, because like you, I love this episode. It's a good episode. It's a solid episode. It brings up an issue that we never really get to see again in quite the same way on Babylon 5, and that is from the perspective of these workers. Do we ever hear from the dock workers again? Unfortunately, no. But they make a great presence here, and Sinclair is fantastic. You know, reading between the lines, playing a little bit of legalese to do everything he can in his power to come to as close to a resolution as he possibly can with the power he has.
Yeah.
But it does not fit our criteria. You can skip it.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart, but yeah.
Not until we get to Mac and Bo, like, do we see the really kind of like the plight of the workers on this station and mostly human workers.
Right. And with Mac and Bo, there's not a labor dispute. So it's not like this comes back. Right. Now, if that had been the case, maybe you could make an argument to keep it. But even though it's a solid episode, you don't have to see it.
Agreed.
Okay. I know there's going to be some people fighting us on that one.
Let's hear it in the comments.
That's okay. Please do. All right. Signs and portents. A Centauri noble comes to Babylon 5 to transport an important Centauri relic in Londo's possession back to the homeworld. And a mysterious man visits all the alien ambassadors, asking them an unusual question. You've got to keep this one. Hello, this is the introduction of Mr. Morden.
This is the introduction to pretty much what Babylon 5 is about.
Yeah, we're getting to some hardcore issues here. So if you skip this, you are skipping a full beat, and that not going to fly.
You know, the interesting thing is that if we had to choose from any of the ones that we say see it, I would say Signs and Portents is a must see. Absolutely
essential. I agree. Just because so many things that start in this episode get set into motion that, without it, you don't fully understand what's going on. Nope.
Yeah. And this is where they start the who are you? What do you want? You know, Mr. Morden, he starts his relationship with Londo, ropes him in. This is not just something. This is the eye, Right. And even though that is just a trinket, it shows. Well, first of all, it shows that that we never see this weird triangular silver makeup-y thing on Delen's forehead ever again, which was cool.
Truth, yes.
But it also it just basically shows how amazing Morden is. Like at the very beginning, he's just a fantastic character. Fantastic character.
Yeah, good stuff. Yep, you can't skip this one. What's next?
TKO.
I love that reaction, Norm.
I can actually do an entire episode of this on TKO to actually praise its merits. So Garibaldi is surprised when an old friend comes to Babylon 5 to fight in the Mutai.
Yeah.
The savage alien fighting arena. Meanwhile, Ivanova has trouble dealing with her father's death. Now, this is the episode that, again, I'm troubled by this. That's why I kind of like snickered a little bit, because this is the episode where she's really kind of coming to terms with it. It's not Uncle Joseph yet, but
no, wait, isn't this
Uncle Joseph?
Yes, I think this is Uncle Joseph.
You're right. Yeah. This is her Shiva.
Okay, so this kind of I forgot that happened in this episode in particular, because I'm sorry, the whole Walker Smith thing, you can skip it and it means nothing to the grander story.
Right.
I think, dang it, I hate doing this, but I got to take back what I said about Ivanova's little mini arc in season 1 here with her father dying. No, I think you can skip this entire episode. Yes, it's good for her as a character, but I think you do learn in other ways just how many people she has lost in her life, the grief that she carries with her. Even though it's really powerful here, the A plot of this story really takes it down a notch for me.
I agree. And I think that if they spent more time on Ivanova and setting Shiva and Uncle Yosef in that entire line, if that was the A storyline and they did 60-40 on that and moved Walker Smith to the B storyline with a tie, it would have been a more powerful episode, because there's, it's really, what this is really setting up is that it's not so much the relationship with her father, because that was estranged. It's Ivanova's storyline is more important with a relationship and her mother, because she was a telepath and she had to take the sleepers and killed herself.
Right.
So that's to me like why, I get the father storyline, and we're getting a little bit more of a backstory on why she's so Russian and pessimistic and all that kind of stuff. But
sure.
it doesn't really add to the story overall.
Unfortunately, no. Like, it really pains me to say that, but no, I think we can drop this one.
All right. Let's just skip it.
Come at me.
Come at me, comments.
Yeah, for real, at me. Okay, the next one is Grail. A man comes to Babylon 5 asking the alien ambassadors for information that can help him with his quest to find the Holy Grail, where a down below gangster gives security problems by mind-wiping all who oppose him. I think this is a skippable one. We, I mean, it's kind of okay for what it is, but we don't ever see what happens with Jinxo, if he finds the Holy Grail, what he's looking for. I don't have any reason to argue for this one. Hate to say.
I love David. Yeah, I love David Warner. Always have. But my love for an actor isn't enough to be able to vote for this episode. No,
sorry, that doesn't carry enough weight. So easy to skip this one.
Yeah. Next episode, 16, Eyes. Sinclair's decision of the last year catch up with him when an internal affairs investigator arrives to test the crew's loyalty to Earth Force with the help of a telepath. And Lanier shows great interest in Garibaldi's attempt at assembling a 1990s motorcycle.
that subplot,
which is fun and all, but for me, this is a see it episode because we get more of why Sinclair was chosen for promotion over somebody as influential as General Ari Ben Zion, who's like one of the chiefs of staff. And it really does start Garibaldi's like his investigation into the 24-hour period that started all the way back with Sky Full of Stars. Now, one interesting thing as I was formulating my list that I came across was kind of catching myself wanting to maybe skip this one because I skipped By Any Means Necessary, because this is kind of the consequences of that trickling down here. But there's other things at play than just that. And so I think this is worth watching. I gotta read this. Thumbs down to both of you when it comes to David Warner. You both deserve to be de-resed. I want those conscripts. Sorry, John. I say, hey, John, I said that I love David Warner. I just didn't love the episode for us see it. Yeah, I mean, he did a great job in the role. It's just not essential with our criteria. So for Eyes, are we saying see it or skip it? I think for the whole thing of like testing Sinclair's loyalty to Earth and whatnot, and almost this Orwellian transformation that's happening with the Earth government, this is accelerating that just enough to make me want to say yes, but I'm 50-50. Where are you at? Well, I like it for the sheer fact that we get to see a different, kind of like this different dynamic, that there are people that were way, way more qualified than Sinclair. Like Ari Ben Zion, when Garibaldi investigated him and he said, this guy is like the top. He's like chief of staff. He's been groomed for this position. And all of a sudden you were like way down the list. You were way, way down the list. And then you were chosen. So that piece of information, I think, is important for viewers to understand that Sinclair has been chosen for a reason. And yeah, that's true. Going down the line, that's really important just because of the Minbari connection. This is the only other time, as far as I remember, where we see I believe that the blue uniforms are kind of like the one side of the military for EarthGov, and then these green uniforms are like the army side, because the commander of Babylon 4 wore the green uniform. Arya Ben Zion wore the green uniform, and we also get Harriman Gray. Harriman Gray, played by the great Jeffrey Combs, who was a really interesting character when it comes to like the Psi Corps, because the only other telepaths that we knew of were Bester and Talia and now Harriman Gray, and also it also really kind of forced the issue of Ivanova's paranoia with the Psi Corps, because she was going to be forced under the rules of eyes of internal affairs to take a telepathic scan, and she says, I would rather give up my commission and be court-martialed than do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. That does make it essential, because that leads to things down the road.
Yeah, and that I think is more important to her storyline than losing her father.
As horrible as that might be, yes. As far as Babylon 5 goes, I have to agree.
Yeah. So that's my vote for eyes. That's why I say see it. Okay.
Cool. So far we are 8-8. See 8, skip 8.
That's pretty fair.
I mean, honestly, I wasn't really sure how season 1 was going to pan out, just because so many things are set up, but a lot of things you can kind of jump into a little bit later that have a lot more impact. Now, as we go through the other seasons, that might really make our lives difficult, just because there's so much emotion. Yeah.
So much tougher.
Okay, but for now, our next episode is Legacies. A Minbari war cruiser comes to Babylon 5 to display the body of a recently dead Minbari leader, while Ivanova and Talia battle for the fate of a young girl with newly discovered telepathic powers. Oh, I don't know about this one. You do learn some things about Minbari culture, and personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this episode, so I can't let that bleed into my decision. But I still want to say no. What do you say?
I said yes, but
why?
This was one of those kind of like 50-50s for me. Well, first of all, because I love the relationship that Naroon and Sinclair build together and start this understanding kind of like the Minbari culture before the Battle of the Line and what this meant to them. There was like, we always thought that the Minbari were a little bit more on the softer side, but then you see the warrior caste, and then you see the wind swords and how they were tied into this militant side of the Minbari. And I love the duplicity of Delenn in this episode. You know, you thought that she was kind of like this goody-goody ambassador that followed all the rules, but then she was the one that stole Branmer's body, cremated it because he was religious caste, even though that he was in charge of probably one of the greatest warships, and greatest crews of the wind swords in the fleet. So, and I also love John Vickery, but I know that's not the reason why I should vote for it. But I vote for this more along the lines of there's still this great hatred between the Minbari and the humans. And there's this one great line that really kind of sets the tone for who Sinclair is. And that's when Naroon says, "You speak like a Minbari."
It's true. Yeah, okay. I think if there's any factor that necessitates this as a keeper, it is the introduction of Naroon.
I just don't like the B story. The B story is what really kills me on this.
It's awful. I'm sorry.
Terrible.
It's terrible. So I think really that's what's affecting my judgment of this episode more than anything, is the fact that I really hate that B story, and nothing about that matters later on.
If you skip this episode and see Naroon later, do you have enough context?
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, you really do learn a lot about Minbari culture here, but can you absorb it from other places and be just fine? I was leaning toward no. Now I'm leaning toward yes, Norm.
Well, see, when Naroon comes back, that's when Delenn is about to become become Entel Za, and she's going to take over the Rangers, and then Marcus. I believe that's when he comes back, and then Marcus sacrifices himself because he would die for her, and that's when Naroon says, "Okay, I don't really get what's going on here."
I mean, it's probably good to know kind of the hostility that Naroon has, but I think you can still see that episode in season 3 and absorb. Okay, Naroon is a little bit hostile. He doesn't quite understand why Delenn is such a thing. Why is she until Zah?
Mhm.
Well, it's because of what Marcus does in that episode, not here.
Yeah. I get that. I just think that for me, there's still a lot of layers of the Minbari culture that we're seeing more of in this. Like before, like say, like in Parliament of Dreams, you see a lot of the religious side. You see the softer side of the Minbari.
Yes.
But then in this one, you see that Delenn shaves the truth where she needs to, and that adds a lot to her character. You see that the Minbari aren't really this soft alien species. You see that the warrior caste is very militant and very adamant about their leadership, and they're kind of like forcing this whole like funeral procession on everybody. It's like, you will respect our leader.
Right. Yeah, that is true. I think it also shows that there is a definite disparity in the Minbari culture between religious and warrior. They're not seeing eye to eye. Mm-hmm. They're on very different sides of the issue, and at this point, the workers aren't really having much of a voice at all. So that might be essential viewing going forward, just because of what happens with, say, the Great Council later on. This, I think, establishes context for that.
And it also shows that there's still a lot of bad blood 10 years past the Battle of the Line. Right.
So given all of that, okay, let's keep it.
All right, let's keep it. Good. That was a good deliberation, though.
That was a good, it wasn't a debate. It was a deliberation. Correct word. Nice.
All righty. So episode 18, A Voice in the Wilderness, part 1. Strange signals begin emanating from Epsilon 3, the planet around which Babylon 5 orbits. A science ship is sent to investigate, but is fired upon by a defense system on the planet. When a revolt against the Earth-appointed government breaks out on Mars, Garibaldi worries about a former lover stationed there. Now, I hate two-parters because of this reason. Do you want? Should Voice in the Wilderness Part 1 and 2 be judged as a solo episode, a solo story, or individual episodes? Because you can't watch one without the other.
That's just it. My rationale is if you keep both. If you ditch both, or if you ditch one, you ditch both, because you can't have one without the other. It makes no sense.
Now, here's the thing. I'm going to treat these as one story.
Let's do that with two-parters.
Okay, so why don't you read the second part, and then we'll see where we are.
Sounds good. The situation becomes more tense when the Earth Force heavy cruiser arrives at the station to protect Earth's interests, and the fusion reactors on Epsilon 3 begin to act erratically, threatening to destroy the planet and Babylon 5.
Okay, now, for me, even though I'm not the biggest fan of these two episodes, because of what they introduce in these episodes, I have to say see it, because they introduce Epsilon 3, the Great Machine, Drawl, not Zathras yet. We'll get to that. But
indeed, yeah.
Right?
No, we have to do this because it establishes, the planet that the station, that's in the background, the visuals of the station this whole time. It's good to get to know that. But then there's the whole thing of Drawl and the Great Machine. That matters later on. And also, this is the introduction of Lise. That matters to Garibaldi going down the line later.
Right. There are too many specific things in these two episodes, and I personally think that it could have been handled in one, but they wanted to do two, so they're doing two. And I liked the whole thing with like Epsilon 3 at the end, like Earth Force jumps in, Captain Pierce, on the Hyperion comes in and he says, if there's a weapon down there, I want it. It belongs to Earth, yada, 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 showing that Earth is still earthy. So
humans, am I right?
Yeah, but I mean, it does. It's Drawl, and even though we have different actors playing Drawl later on, the great John Schuck plays him later on. You know that this machine is ancient, it's powerful, and it's going to be essential when it comes to the war. So
yes,
for that, you have to watch these two episodes because there's too much context at play.
Yep. You've got to have it to know what happens or to really understand what's happening going forward. So yeah. All right. That takes us to Babylon Squared. You want to read that?
No. Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. Babylon 4 reappears at the same place it disappeared 4 years earlier, and Sinclair and Garibaldi lead an expedition to evacuate its crew. Meanwhile, Delenn is summoned by the Grey Council. They inform her that they have selected a new leader, her. Babylon Squared is absolutely the next must-see episode in season 1, next to Signs of Importance. It's too important. It's too important to this season.
Yep, this is one of the most solid episodes of season 1 in terms of context and things that you have to understand later on. If you don't see this episode, you're not going to have a freaking clue about War Without End parts 1 and 2, even though they do explain some things as you go into that episode. No. You want full context. You've got to see this. Plus, what happens with Delenn and the Grey Council is essential for understanding what happens later with her.
And Zathras. Boom.
Zathras! Hello. I mean, that alone is enough, right?
Tim Choate murders it in this episode. Just straight murders it as Zathras.
Oh, great freaking character. Love it. All right. Quality of mercy. Dr. Franklin investigates an unlicensed medical practitioner in Down Below, while Londo takes Lanier on a tour of Babylon 5's seedier locales. And in the brig, a convicted murderer waits for his sentence to be carried out. The death of personality. Okay, this again gives us some trinkets of things that we need to understand going down the line. Now, as far as the healing machine goes, we can get context for that later on. I would think even with both reviving Garibaldi and with Marcus and Ivanova. But it is good to have a fuller understanding of how this thing kind of came to be. So I do think that's a point in its favor, not a drawback. And then the whole thing about brain wipes and death of personality, we see that again later on. This is an Earth thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say keep it.
I say keep it. I mean, that was a no-brainer for me. Yes, you have the alien healing device, but you also had the concept of the mind wipe that gets played out superbly in season 3 with passing through Gethsemane with Brad Dourif as brother Edward. Oh my God. And understanding that there is this there's a judge advocate that is on the station and his specific job is to pass sentence on the station to keep everything away from kind of like the courts on Earth or wherever. He had a very weird title too. I mentioned that like earlier on in one of our previous episodes. But the quality of mercy is, I think it's essential just because alien healing device, mind wipe, and I thought that just the whole storyline with Down Below and having these clinics, this free clinic that Franklin, he steals or borrows or lifts or whatever, all these medical supplies that aren't being used for a free clinic that heals the sick that can't afford it. And that goes more to his character again. Yep,
exactly. Yep, that's precisely the point I was going to make too. So pretty essential overall. Maybe not, I don't know, maybe not as solid of an essential episode as some of the others that we've had here, like Babylon Squared, but a lot of little things that are super important later on.
I think so. I mean, especially the alien healing device. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the great thing about Babylon 5 is that you have all of these nuggets that are being planted throughout the course of this season that pay off in huge dividends later.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but after they revived Garibaldi with the alien healing device, I thought, oh, they're done with that. That's why they did that whole thing. And here's the continuity. And cool, it worked. It saved one of the main characters' lives. Oh, Babylon 5. Why don't you break my heart a little harder? Why don't you?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Let's see. Before we get to Chrysalis, I want to read a couple of
do it.
Chat. So going all the way back to Eyes, John Bowersock says Jeffrey Combs is a great actor. We know him really well from all of his appearances on Star Trek, especially as Wayun in Deep Space Nine. Let's see. Dana says, agree, Babylon Squared is essential. And Daniel says, Zathras, not the one. Not the one. Not the one. What? You're not the one. Won't talk. Can't talk. Not the one. And Dana, thank you for your comment here on Ombudsman. Is that the title you're thinking of? Yes, it's still weird to me. It's like a judge. Well, they just call him judge. I don't know.
Buds. It reminds me of Budweiser.
Ombudsman.
Ombudsman. Ombudsman.
Like buds. And like three.
It's that 3-syllable thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. We've got one more, and then we're just barely going to finish this on the skin of our teeth tonight.
Here we go.
It's Chrysalis. The Centauri and Narns quarrel about a Narn outpost in a quadrant adjacent to the Centauri space when Londo gets an offer to take care of the problem. Meanwhile, Garibaldi tries to find out what his informants stumble upon that got him killed. Hello, this is essential. There's no question.
This is the third must-see of this of the season. Chrysalis,
Abso-fragging-lutely.
I mean, it changes everything. I mean, there's the epitaph. The epitaph of this episode is exactly what Sinclair says at the end. Nothing's the same anymore.
Yeah. This sets the stage for season 2. So if you don't see this, you jump into season 2, you're not going to have a freaking clue what happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Garibaldi gets, he's Garibaldi at his best. He's paranoid. He does his sleuthing. He gets shot for it by his second in command. Sinclair, he's not exactly sure what's happening. The president of the Earth Force is assassinated.
Yeah, kind of important to know that.
And it sets up. It sets up. The president, and you see William Morgan Clark getting sworn into office. And then Delenn goes in a cocoon.
Yeah. So everything about this episode is essential.
Also, G'Kar goes off because he's like, "There's another power out there."
That's right, he does. So another important thing to know.
Right. So Londo's character begins his shift. G'Kar's character begins his shift. We didn't know at the time that Sinclair was going to leave the show, that Michael O'Hare was going to leave the show, but you saw that there's a certain helplessness there. At least he has Catherine. They are going to get married, or at least he proposed. Hey, you want to get married or not?
What a great proposal, isn't it?
Right. So there's so much going on, and it's so well paced, so well written. It sets up everything for season 2. It's an absolute must see. You have to see it.
It is one of the most essential of season 1. Okay, so that brings our grand total 14 see it and 8 skip it's.
I think that's pretty fair.
I think that's pretty good. Yeah. For a first season, I think for a lot of shows, you might say, oh, you can skip it, especially with a more episodic format, which season 1 mixes it up a little bit. It starts off fairly episodic and then starts tying things more and more until you are going into a more serialized format. And then season 2, they really start to roll with it. So honestly, I'm pretty, that was pretty much my expectation, was see most of them, but not all of them, a good 2/3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, since we've stuck to our guns and we were pretty much on the same page most of the time with a couple of ambivalencies here and there. I think that there are obviously the must-sees that we pointed out, with Signs and Portents, with Babylon Squared, and with Chrysalis. Those have to be seen. If you don't see those, you don't get what Babylon 5 is about, like truly, the main narrative, in my opinion.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
So let's jump into a couple of comments here, and before we wrap things up. So, Dana says Chrysalis essential. John Bowersock says see it. Daniel Keller says Chrysalis is an amazing season finale.
Agreed.
Dana says Chrysalis, great setup for season 2. So I think we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, Chrysalis is one of the big consensus of you kind of need to see this one. It's important. Yeah, and as a season finale, boy, it's explosive. I was like blown away. Forgive the phrasing, but I couldn't think of anything else when I saw it for the very first time.
So there we are, Shar, our very first see it or skip it. We have 4 more to go, obviously. And I think it's just going to get tougher from here.
It really is. As the story gets more complicated, we're going to have to say yes a whole lot more.
So I think just for this episode, I think it was a really successful test run on this format, StreamYard. I think that we're going to be sticking with this for the time being. We'll make sure that everyone on the Facebook page gets a link to this show. We'll put the link on at the end of the show when we're all done. And I think that everyone here, thank you so much for your chats. Your chats were amazing. And I'm glad, Shar, that you were able to see them finally. And
oh my gosh, This is revolutionary because you would have to run the show because only one person was allowed to see the control panel on Be Live. And so I would have to come on as a guest. And I didn't get to see all of your comments unless I logged in on Facebook, which would jeopardize my connection even further, which we all know is not a good thing to do. So, Norm, I'm glad you don't have to just drive the whole thing anymore. I can, help and do my share. And I appreciate that.
Now, this was so much fun, and I can't wait to get to the next one. We will let you know exactly what we're going to do for the next episode. But I do believe that in that poll, yes, we overwhelmingly had a lot of votes for doing See It or Skip It Season 1. But I would like to tackle Legend of the Rangers. Oh,
I would too. And we've got a couple of, real champions for the merits of tackling that. What do you want to call it? A movie? I guess it's a wannabe pilot. It was a failed pilot.
Yeah.
Emily, I'm thinking of you especially. Do you want to tackle it next week? Should we just decide on doing it?
Oh, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think we should definitely
sure. Okay.
give it a whirl.
Settled.
Yeah.
So we didn't forget about you guys. We'll tackle it next week, and that way we make everybody as happy as we can.
So that was a great episode. Any final thoughts, Char?
No, just that this was a lot of fun, and I hope everybody who tuned in also had fun.
I think so. I had fun. I know you had fun.
Yeah.
I'm out of Bavaria, so that means that
means it's time to end the show.
Yeah, it's time to end the show because I can't pour myself a second one without having something to eat. So, anywho, thanks everybody for joining us here on the ZócaloCast for our maiden voyage here on YouTube. And again, we'll put the link in the show so that everyone else can have a chance to take a look at what we had to say. Make sure that you get your votes in. If you have any disagreements with us, let us know. But until then, I have been the Lounge Lizard, as you can see by my naming convention there. She has been Charlynn Schmeidt. And until next time, be seeing you.